The day had gone by swiftly as we visited other markets and shops in an attempt to solidify our merchant identity in Sunraiser. As the sun began to set, we had taken to the idea of staying the night at an inn before we would begin to set our plans of retaking Sunraiser into motion. We kept along the cobblestone path until we reached a humble tavern that housed beds for men visitors in the city. We saw men crowding outside of the bar, talking amongst themselves and drinking. Guards across the street kept their eyes on them, looking for drunkards to throw into their jails. It seemed the guards were always looking for an excuse to do wrong to menfolk. I knew of what my brother Jörn had said before, that we would change them through our courtesies and make them honorable folk, but they lacked any qualities that would make me want to give them a shred of decency. I put it out of my head as we came to the inn, the name of which was the Tilted Tumble. An odd name, but it was one of the few places welcoming to menfolk. My brothers and I walked into the inn. It was what you would expect. Benches, tables, and chairs, men resting on them, drinks clasped in their hands. The inn was filled to the brim with Westmenkin, who talked about trade and the politics of their homeland. The lighting was dim, however, making the faces of men who sat in the corners of the room hard to distinguish. A few workers kept things tidy, but there was one worker in particular, a bar maiden, an elderly lady, most likely a former denizen of Sunraiser when it was occupied by men. She had a burn mark that was in the shape of a pint glass on her neck, which I assume made her slave to the innkeeper. A young elf came over to her as she scrubbed the floors and made mention of the stain on her dress. In its tongue, it suggested that she should wash it out tonight as important guests would be visiting the inn tomorrow, and it did not want them thinking little of it for not keeping a worker in proper attire. She told her that she would, and thanked him for pointing it out to her. It nodded at her, then left for its counter. We approached the counter, the elf turning to us with a look of glee. It must have been happy to see more menfolk to leech off of. "Esteemed guests, I bid ye welcome to the Tilted Tumble, so named after a poem my grandfather had made in his youth. It's quite funny, actually. You should give it a read sometime. I place one in every room." "We want a room. How much?" I asked. "Well, 10 bars from each man for the night." "Well, that's steep," Bielan protested. "I mean, for you folk, this is one of the few places you can stay the night at. So, well, it seems there is not much choice, is there?" "Fine. Here's your bars," Jörn said, giving the elf 40 of them. "Kind men, please. I do not set the prices here. It's simply the standard due to the taxes our governor has imposed. Please understand," the elf said, taking our bars. "It is fine," I said. "Our brother is simply tired. The rest is much appreciated." "Of course, and your room is up the stairs there, 3rd door down the hall." We nodded and left for the room up the stairs. "Enjoy your rest, menfolk." We walked up the stairs to come to a dimly lit hallway. 4 wooden doors lay before us, each with knobs made of copper to open them. We walked to the 3rd door, opened it, and stepped into the room. The room was larger than expected. 3 beds were lined against the wall, all with straw pillows and large quilted blankets. There was 2 cushioned chairs in opposing corners of the room, opposite of the beds. A lantern hung against the window and a candle rested in a small bowl, the bowl resting on a nightstand. "You really must control your temper there, Bielan," Jörn stated as he closed the door. I know, it's just... The elf is a bastard, I acknowledge that. I saw how he treated the elder. It's hard, I know, but she will be free in due time. Have faith in your father's future and what will come. Acting now is not the time." "Yes, you are right," Bielan said, taking off his pack. All of us did the same, placing our packs next to the beds. Jörn, however, placing his next to his chair. "I shall keep watch for the night," Jörn said as he is about to sit on the chair. No, please, let me, brother. I have made errors today. I need to amend them." "Amend them when your mind is rested and well, so you won't make more mistakes tomorrow." Bielan sighed and let out a slight chuckle. "Fine, I shall. Thank you, Jörn." Bielan and Arif began to look in their packs to take count of their equipment as they sat on their beds. I walked over to the window and gazed outside. The streetway was clearing up. Human workers came to put lantern lights out and clean the street of any debris that was dropped on the roadway, shoveling the debris into their horse-pulled cart. They seemed dirty and ragged, as if they were kept from a proper bath. but this did not seem to bother them, as their expression was one of slight glee. After some workers were done clearing the street, they would stand behind their cart and pull a smoking pipe from their pocket. They lit it up with a match and began to take some puffs. As they smoked, a guard would walk past while on patrol. The workers nodded to the elf, but the guard didn't acknowledge them. The guard would stop by shops that were off to the side of the street, knocking on the doors to check on the denizens inside. An elderly elf or a younger one would come to it, the elderly with a gleaming face, and the younger with a tired grin. They all seemed to show some sort of appreciation to the guard, either in the form of a handshake or a plate filled with baked goods. The guard would decline the treats but accept the shaking of hands, then be on its way to the next shop. "Any news from the front, Storn?" Urine had asked me, I assumed jokingly. "A guard's on patrol outside, but he isn't here to do the men wrong, thank the Father," I responded much more seriously. "Take ease, kin. The enemy has yet to acknowledge us. We are safe." "You can never be too sure, brother. The elves have magics unknown to us." "Yes, but they do not have the Father on their side, do they?" I let a huff of air escape from my nose and a grin from my mouth. "That is true. Thank you for reminding me." "You would have remembered once you rested your mind. You are intelligent in that way." "You honor me, but you are wiser. I only hope my mind ages as yours has." "Remember your faith, Storn. That is how you will retain wisdom." I nodded at him and turned back to the window. I saw the moon now hovering over the Capitol's tower, and the gray tower that the elves had erected right next to it. The gray tower had been used to root out men with ill intent towards the elves, which would then lead to an immediate destruction of their physical body and the collapse of their mind. A cruel fate, but we Winds had practiced a mindset, one that allowed some of us, including me, to gaze upon it without giving away our ill intent, though one must still be careful. The moon began to rise above the gray tower. The celestial body illuminated magical energies that were bestowed atop it. The energies had clear and visible colors that indicated whether the magics would affect the mind, the body, or some other aspect of the physical world. I saw a translucent stream of purple colors intertwined with orange colors chasing each other around a static sphere, which was gray. The purple colors that were chasing the orange was the order our Father had bestowed to humanity. Order was used to repair people's minds if they had fallen ill in the brain. It was also used to inspire, frighten, and calm those who needed such treatment. Urine was gifted with the ability to calm others through the means of order, but not to the degree that the garbed, or the sorcerers of men, were able to do. This sight of colors, the purple chasing the orange, it was dreadful, as it meant that the elves had tapped into the magics of men to use for their own twisted towers. The fact that it worked alongside the stream of orange, the elves' magic, meant that they had tapped into some form of forbidden practice, creating the abomination that the Grey Tower was. Perhaps their sorcerers had mimicked or stolen the ability from one of our garbed to use for their twisted machination. My heart was filled with dread at the thought. Who knows what else the elves could do with our magic? I knelt down on my knees to pray to my Father. I prayed to him for our protection from the elves' twisted creation, their heretical ways, from their swords, their spears, and their arrows. Every facet of pain that the elves could administer to us, I prayed that we were protected from that. And after I prayed for it, I asked him, why? Why would the elves have control of forces only we as humanity were given a right to? What horrible god did they draw their powers from that allowed such an abominable machination to exist? In due time, I hoped he would deliver an answer, but I also feared that the answer may frighten me. I rose up and walked to my bed. I had to rest my mind. This was too much for me to take in, also suddenly too. I sat on it. The bed was soft, the sheets too. It was much better than the hard ground we set our tents on the night prior, almost worth the money. I rested my head on the pillow. It was rather stiff compared to the rest of the bed, but I couldn't complain. I looked at my younger brothers. Both were fast asleep. I hoped their dreams would bring some comfort, as things would grow more difficult in the coming days. Urine watched the door, a sword in his lap, his fingers tapping the chair's armrest. The wise man had done this many times before. He would sit vigilantly, overnight, in camp, staying awake for our sake, our safety. But he considered this nothing, and would often brag of the times he was a scout in war, that he would sit and watch towns and cities for weeks straight, unmoving, planning, and making a report in his head to give to his captain back at their camp. He may be exaggerating how much time he spent doing such, as old men do, but I did not let this worry me. I trust him with my life, even as I sleep. I closed my eyes to rest, another day having passed my brothers and I, another day our father granted us protection and taken lands. I then awoke to another. My brother Jörn turned to me, smiled, then turned back to the door. I got my bearings, grabbing my bag which I had placed on the ground. I took inventory of its contents. I had 53 bars of gold, 24 bars of silver, 3 rabbit pelts, and 1 deer pelt. It was enough bars for us to stay another few nights. That is, if Tarburn and my other brothers hadn't wasted theirs on trying to blend in elsewhere in the city. If that were the case, then we would have to start finding places to hide while night fell. I looked over at the other 2 who were still sleeping. They were still tired from the several days we had spent hiking the mountainsides and hilly plains of the old lands. I ended their slumber with a clap of my hands, Arif being the first to bolt upright while Bielan arose lazily. Arif grabbed his bag and took inventory of his items while Bielan did the same. Jörn took inventory of his own bag as I watched the door. From youngest to oldest, they closed their bags and arose from their places of rest and stretched out. I did the same. "Another day, my brothers. What do you believe to be our next course of action, Storn?" Jörn asked. "I believe we should try finding a route to reach the armory, then inform our brothers where we should meet as soon as the guards catch wind of our plans." "I would have to agree, but how do you think we should do it?" "Well, we know the old armory was hidden underneath the capital. We could only get there through the sewers at this point, but who knows what things rest there now. The guard were adamant about its protection, setting up traps and beasts to guard it. But I noticed last night, the Grey Towers, they utilized the energies of order." Jörn's eyes narrowed as he turned his head towards Bielan and Arif, who were visibly confused. The moon illuminated the colors, a purple and orange chasing each other around a gray sphere. They seemed to have been able to mix it with their twisted magics. "That is peculiar," Jörn responded, turning towards the door. "You think the guard would have made that known to us upon our departure?" "One would assume, but they may have had their reasons. Or they knew we were clever enough to pick up on it, eventually, as you have done now. I suppose now it would be a good thing, along with our mission to retake the city, that we figure out how much the elves know about order. We might even find a clue in the armory." "I agree, but let's not get wrapped up in that now. Let's instead set off." We left the room, then the inn, thanking the keeper for the accommodations.